It 3, 2, 1. Jessica, welcome to the December 26th podcast. How are you?
Thank you. I'm well. It's
You
a
brought-
Saturday.
You came in with good energy for a Saturday. Super chill. Yeah,
Thank you.
I like it. And you might be our first guest with the knit hat on the show, and I'm with it. I'm with this
Thank you.
program.
You know what? It's really, I wore it because I like how bright it is. And I was having a bad hair day because last night my scarf slipped off. So
Oh no! When that happens, you can
it's a
forget
wrap.
it.
Yeah, I was like, but we got to go. We got to press on.
Awesome. We're happy to have you here today.
Thank you for having me.
So let's get into it.
Okay.
Who is Jessica Veronica Couch?
Jessica Veronica Couch is the daughter of Finesse and Thurman. I love my parents and the foundation they set. I'm a sister. I'm a big sister and a little sister. I'm a friend to a lot of people, and I would like to describe myself as a catalyst. So I realized at this age, one of the gifts I guess I have is to help people like either break through something or get past something or just like discover something new, and that's in like personal and professional. So it kind of works out well to finally recognize like, oh, okay, well maybe that's who I am.
So you're a middle child?
I am. I'm actually one of 7.
One of 7.
Yes.
Oh, your
So,
parents were
busy.
making it happen.
Yeah. busy. I am. So I have 3 older brothers, 1 older sister, and then 2 younger sisters.
Got it.
Yeah. So I'm in the middle, but I'm like everybody's nurturing sibling. So
Okay.
I try to
So
be.
where did you grow up?
Durham, North Carolina, Bull
North
City.
I definitely heard the southern drawl a little bit.
It comes out
Right.
on the weekends
So
when I'm tired.
you don't hear like of that many people in our age bracket who have that many siblings. Like our parents' generation, yeah. But at this point, most people are like 4 max.
Oh, yeah.
But what was it like growing up with that many siblings?
Honestly, I feel like growing up with a lot of siblings is fun because it's so many different personalities. You kind of have your own ecosystem. You learn a lot from everybody. You learn up and you learn down. We grew up with very like protective, loving brothers, and I have an older sister. For me, life was like a constant learning experience, but also trying to find your position in place. That can be a lot, you know, when you're in a big family. It's not that you have to compete for time or attention, but you got to know your lane and figure out your entry point to whatever. My parents are very busy, but we kind of grew up like a gang. We're very gang. Also, it's fun. Like sometimes it's fun, but also sometimes you are very annoyed. So like,
I'm sure.
yeah, because it's a lot, but you learn to share, you learn to give, you learn to like let people do them. I think it's the best experience to learn how to deal in the world, because if you can deal and love with each one of your siblings, if you can find a way to like connect and love with them, you'll be fine. Like,
But were you like, by the time you got to high school, like, I have to get out of here? Was that the vibe?
yes, so like very much so you're like, okay, I want to get as far away from my family as possible sometimes. But again, because you're gang, like eventually you're always like, I miss my tribe. Like I want people who think like me. But it does push you to go out there because you have a foundation of people that you can kind of draw from for support. So that's always cool. So like I have sisterhood, I have brothers, I have family. So to me, it makes me feel more confident and like do more.
Yeah.
Because like at the end of the day, I can, I have a team that'll cheer for me. So that's cool.
So you stayed in North Carolina for
Oh,
college,
wow.
though, right?
Yeah. Well, my parents were like, you stay in state, we'll pay for it. So I'm like,
You're like, it's settled.
yeah. Plus, to be honest, like, I wasn't as ambitious with picking colleges because I thought my life was going to go a different direction. Like, I thought I was just going to go to law school. Like, I was kind of passionate about things, but I didn't recognize what I was passionate about. So I stayed in school. I got into Carolina early, but my sister went there. And it was one of those times I was like, we need to do separate things. Like, we're 18 months apart. Like, I'm going to go somewhere else. I wanted to focus on fashion, but, like, I didn't have no real plans. So I was like, I'll just stay in state and see how it goes. Now, looking back, I think I'm like, I probably could have utilized a lot more resources and stuff. But, like, obviously, I'm going to push that on my kids. But, yeah, I stayed in state, stayed around, and it was... I like Southern college experience. I think it's a good college experience. Going to a PWI is an experience
Unto itself. Yeah.
Oh my God. So that was very interesting. And NC State is unique. It has a really large demographic of African Americans. So you kind of feel like you're in a mini HBCU amongst a group of 30,000 other people who don't look like you. So it was cool.
So at that point, were you still thinking I'm going to get like a traditional major, prepare for law school, etc.?
Yeah, I was like, I'm really interested in fashion. So like my aunt was a seamstress. And she used to make us like custom everything when we were younger. And I just happened to pick up on sewing. So she let me come in and sew. I used to change my clothes like 3 times a day. I was very connected to wearing what I felt. So like depending on my mood is what I would wear. And it was a big deal to me because coming from a house of 7 people, again, like finding your identity,
Right.
you're going to attach it to whatever you can so that you can feel like, okay, this is who I am. For me, it was how I looked. Like I could not wear things that I didn't like I just could not. And it was just something that stuck with me. So I was like, I like this fashion thing. I want to learn about it. But we have a family law practice, and my mom was grooming us all like, you're going to go to law school. So I'm like, all right. And like, I'll do this fashion thing, but I'll go to law school and work for my parents, and we'll figure it out.
So both your parents were in the law?
Yeah. So they have a joint business together. And so yeah, at the time I was like, whatever, I can have a little store on the side. I opened a store coming out of school and operated it for a couple years because I was like, all right, I'm gonna prepare to go to law school, and that did not happen.
So where was this store?
Online.
Okay.
So like we did direct to consumer before direct to consumer was a thing. Only because I had worked in retail. Like I had worked at Nordstrom, and I was like, I saw the gap in the industry where it was like people would come in at Nordstrom and be like, why don't y'all have this brand, this style, this thing? I've seen it. And there was no communication at Nordstrom's between like the sales associates and the buyers. So I was like, I'm gonna fill this gap with my store. That way, like I know the women who need what product, it'll be easy. So like I did that for a while. I didn't like sitting on inventory, so we found creative ways to sell through product. It was fun, but something hit and I was like, this is something I'm curious about, like how we're able to connect with consumers. I love fashion. I love this. I don't want to give it up. I like entrepreneurship. And that's when my life turned upside down because I was like, I don't want to go to law school.
So you make the decision.
Yeah.
Law school's not for me. Did you tell your parents?
Oh, yeah. It was my dad is always like, I had y'all on a 7-year plan. Like, you're supposed to go to undergrad, then you're supposed to go to grad, you're supposed to come into this business. Like, we have a whole thing set up. Y'all are not following the rules, this, that, and the third. So,
Did he want all of you to do that?
yeah, it was gang, gang, gang. I kid you not.
He was like, we're about to build a mid-sized law practice.
That's what they wanted. And that's burdensome. So when you're like, I consider it second generation because what our parents established was not established prior to them in any way. So I saw how hard they worked to put the law business together and how it helped to enrich our lives. So of course it was like an emotional obligation to be like, I want to support this, but this feeling I get from design and from this industry, from solving problems, like I don't get this anywhere else. And so I was like, I know this industry is changing. And I was like, I kind of made a bargain with them. I'm like, just let me try this. And if it fails, if all else fails, law school would be here forever.
Right.
I'll go back. Like, I'll figure it out. And they were pretty patient with that. I mean, that was a hell of a bargain. But it was like, just let me try this. Because I had a feeling. And I'm a very much so, like, everything's based on a feeling with me. So, like, I have to follow these instincts of, like, I think this is where I need to be. And it's been a journey. Now, there are days when I'm like, should I have been a lawyer? I'd be doing something completely different. But then there are days where I'm like, I love what I do.
Right.
I just got to keep going. Like,
So you had that conversation with them.
Yeah.
You're like, give me this opportunity to try a different path. So what happened from there?
the struggle.
Yes, it's real. It is real. The idea is great, but actually executing,
It's
whole
tough.
different story.
I feel like I lost their support, realistically. Like, they're always going to support you, and, like, I'm not going to let you drown. We're not going to let you drown, but I don't understand what you're doing. It's not what we want, therefore, we can support you from afar. And I think sometimes that's good enough, but I struggled with that. When you're so used to having, like, you know, a certain amount of support and pats on the back, when you choose to go independently, it can be tough. But my sister did it first. So my sister was like, my sister's very much like a very independent, like, I'm going to do what I want type person. And as a little sister, I'm like, I'm going to do it too. So she was a great influence for that. But it started a journey of accountability within yourself where you're like, now we've turned down an option of security. We are potentially disappointing our parents, which is tough. And we don't have a playbook for how this is going to go. So what do we do?
Right.
And the answer is you just hustle. Like you you get out there, you make plans. Of course, you have your grand plans and your small plans, but you got to quickly pivot and you got to stay on your toes. And so I went from owning a store. My sister was at NYU getting her master's, so I asked her if I could come sleep on the couch and figure out my next step. Because I was like, I don't want to do this store thing anymore. I want to go beyond this. I think there's like an interesting thing happening in the industry where tech is going to innovate. So she's like, yeah, come to New York. You can sleep on my couch. So I went from like owning a business and running it to like doing internships for like 14 hours a day, like working between two companies. I was working at Tracy Reese, and then I was working as a stylist. And what I was looking for was like, is my hypothesis correct? Is tech going to innovate this industry, or am I just making an assumption based on my little store? And what I found was like, oh, this industry is inherently flawed all across the supply chain. So there was so many opportunities to innovate, but you're talking about big, non-flexible companies, and we're talking about an industry that's so antiquated and backwards that it's like, to really make those changes, you have to be there for the long term. So I didn't know I wish I could say like I knew every step in every way, but a lot of this was fumbling. A lot of this was just like, I'm gonna follow an instinct. If it doesn't work out, I'm gonna keep it moving. What's next? You know, I got to figure some stuff out. It hasn't been a straight path whatsoever. But what I did decide was like, I have this opportunity to get into this space that is going to be new, and I want to prepare myself as a thought leader. So I was like, I love fashion. I understand the consumer part, like, but now let's go to tech. So I didn't come from a tech background. I was like, I got to get in this. So I was like, okay, let's go to grad school. So one of my friends encouraged me. She was like, why don't you come to Cornell? Like, I think you would really like it. I'm like, girl, like... Listen, I'm doing a whole lot, but I don't know if that's like on my radar. She was like, no, you need to try it. So at the time I was styling, I was working for Tracy Reese, and I was building up a styling career in New York quickly.
Like, how was that happening?
So by being proactive. So I was interning with this other company called Camilla Lothar or something agency, and it was for stylists. And I was there, and I asked one day, I was like, I want to be on set. And they were like, okay, well, what do you want to do? I'm like, I don't know. I just want to be on set. The next day they were like, okay, you can go to set and blah, blah, blah. So I'm like, okay, I didn't even know what I was asking. So I go to set, and it's like a Vogue Japan set. So I'm all hyped. I'm like, oh my God, it's Vogue. Oh my God, what is this? And so I'm there. I'm the only Black person. I'm helping. And this Asian girl named Regina, she's like, hey, will you help me? I'm like, cool. So we're working hard. She's a hard worker. I noticed she's like in charge of everything. And she tells me afterwards, she was like, no one's ever worked this hard with me. Listen, if you come work with me, like, I'll put you in the game. I can't afford to pay you, but I can give you connects. And I'm young and scrappy, so I'm like, all right, well, let's just do it. Let's figure it out. So we worked a lot of Vogue sets, and I worked a lot of different magazine sets as like a third assistant, worked my way up, and then got all the way to the Lady Gaga, like, art pop set. That is when I was like, this is a trajectory for success. But looking at the numbers, I was like, how am I supposed to survive?
Right.
Like, you know, fashion doesn't pay on that side. But Regina Chan is now like the editor at Vogue China. So like, it was interesting to make that connection and have that and see how it worked and see what hard work gets you. But I made the decision, like, if I'm going to make it in this industry as a woman of color, what do I want my legacy to be? You know? So I'm trying on like $500,000 minks and stuff for people that are so out of touch with me. And I'm like steaming stuff and I'm setting it up. And you're looking on these call sheets and you're seeing like these head stylists are getting like $8,000 just to show up for a couple hours. You're doing all this work. Your rate is not even a fraction of that. And I was like, this can't be my legacy. Like, I feel like I'm too smart. Not to say that you can't be smart in style. It's just like, I want to contribute more. So I was like, I got to go to school, because for me to get out of this, I'm going to have to like position myself. So I made a decision to apply to Cornell, and I pitched this lady about why, my experience up to that point, what I was passionate about, fit, sizing, and she said, I'd love to see your application across the desk. So to me, I was like, my application? I'm like, okay. So I applied. I moved home to prepare. I had a boyfriend at the time. We were kind of in a rocky situation, like, but I was zoned in. And when I got the letter that it was going to happen, I just remember feeling like, wow, like, my life is about to change. Like, Oh my God, can I turn this
Yeah,
on?
you can silence your phone. It happens. It's okay.
Sorry. So I was like, my life is about to change forever, and I don't know how this is going to go. I don't know how we're going to do this, but let's just roll. So
You moved to Cornell, for this
Yeah.
degree, which is not New York City, that's for sure.
So, the funny thing is, the degree was supposed to be in New York. But at the last minute, they didn't get it approved. So I remember Professor Susan P. Ashdown was like, hey, good news and bad news. Good news is we'd love for you to come up here. The bad news is it's not going to be in New York anymore, but you get to be close to all the research and stuff. I'm like,
Okay, so you're up at the gorgeous, whatever they call it.
yes. I'm like, Ithaca. And on top of that, by the time I got in, they were like, you have a month to report to campus. So I'm like, me and my best friend were supposed to go skydiving. She ended up going alone by herself. God bless her. She's such a champ. And I was like, I got to go to school. So, like, I hustled a car to buy because I had this big truck. And I was like, I'm not taking that up to Ithaca. I hustled a car, got everything together, got all my paperwork. And I was like, I don't even know how I'm going to find a place to live. I did. Thank you, Lord. And I was like, I'm out. Like, I'm out. The best thing about that was I got to pick my curriculum.
Okay.
That was incredible. Like,
So is this like a customized
Yeah.
kind of degree? Okay.
And it was special. It was a master's degree that they were offering. And she was like, you can basically pick your curriculum and figure out what industry problem you want to solve. And I had never heard of anything like that. But I was like, okay, I know I need business classes, engineering classes, computer science classes, and I need to understand like the basic fundamentals of where the industry is going. And so I used that as a time to challenge myself. Because I feel like through all this, my life has been about outdoing myself.
Yeah.
Like, I don't consider anyone else competition or anything like that. For me, again, I guess it's because of my place and, like, with my siblings, everything's about outdoing yourself. Like, you don't really have, competition is more like, can you get better daily?
Yeah.
So I wanted to challenge myself with my education and be like, can you push past what you know and really be able to speak to the things that you want to become? And it was a challenge, but you got to do that sometimes. You got to do it a lot.
And where were your parents in all this? Were they excited that you were going back to school, even though it wasn't for the law?
So prior to me getting into school, they were not excited about what I was doing. They're just like, I don't know what you're doing. I don't know if this fashion thing is a joke for you out here doing this. Like, law school's waiting. When I got into school, the first thing they were like was like, let me see the acceptance letter. I'm like, I'm not making it up. So once they saw that, they were like a little more hands off, like, okay, let's see what you're going to do. And I appreciate the tough love from my parents. Like, they're not going to be overly like, oh my God, I'm so happy. They'll be like, okay, like, now make it work. Like, all right, if you're going to go, make it work. And it was kind of like a deal still because I compromised. I was like, you all want us to get higher degrees. I didn't want to get a higher degree unless it was top 10.
Right.
Because I realized going to NC State, and it's a great school, I was like, if you're not top, you don't really get taken seriously. So you can be the top anywhere and be taken seriously. But for what I wanted to do in my industry, being a woman, being of color, not coming from tech, I had to go high or not go at all. So they understood that and they were like, all right, you got time to make it work. Talk to me when you wrap up your program.
Really?
Yeah. So like the next time I saw them was they came up to Ithaca once during graduation and be like, okay, you did it. Congratulations.
This is very fascinating, but there's also a part of me that understands it. When you talk to Black folks who have Black parents who've taken a very traditional path and built an amazing life for themselves and their families, there's an expectation that you are going to go the safe route.
Oh, yeah. And they don't want to see you flounder. And I understand where it comes from because their fear is like, I know how tough it was for me. I understand like the burden on our race and like how we're looked at. I don't want you floundering. I don't want you to not have wealth. I don't want you to struggle. And it's like, I completely understand that, but we're in a different time. And we also have to be able to take risks and take advantage of these opportunities. So it's good to have both sides, but it's also pressure.
Sure.
It's pressure, man. Like there's so many times you're like, am I making the right decision? Like, am I an idiot? And it's hard, but I also had to let go of the need to have their approval.
Yeah.
And that was tough. I was an adult when I did that. Like, it wasn't like it happened. Like, I'm a teenager. I don't need your help. I had to be a grown up and be like, I don't need your approval. I just need your love and we'll be straight. And that helped a lot.
But the irony of this is you were at Cornell. You weren't at like the random school on the corner for fashion and design.
I know. But my parents are still like, I mean, we're proud of you. This is great, but make it work. Law school awaits you. I remember my mom was like, this will make it even easier for you to get into a law school. I was like, Ma,
they roll hard. They roll hard on
They
the law.
don't play. It's so much to the point I'm like, should I still go?
Wow. And how many years have you been out of college?
I graduated in 2010, so 10 years.
So they're still holding out hope.
Yeah, 10 years out feels so weird.
I've already been there. Yeah. It doesn't get any better. Let me just tell you.
10 years? God, I'm gonna be like 15 years ago.
Yeah, I'm on the 16-year. Yeah, it starts to feel away after a while. Now, people are gonna listen to this and like, I've been out 30 years.
Yeah.
You know, wait for that. But
It's like I feel like I was just there. But yeah, so there's still like, if you want to, we'd love to have you. I'm like, I'd like to transition into a consulting company or agency, but that's a different discussion.
right. So you come out of Cornell.
Yeah.
You've crafted this curriculum around business and engineering and computer science. What was the vision for you then in terms of the next step in your career?
I was like, I want to work for a fashion tech company. I want to go corporate, and really apply all these innovative techniques. And it was just too early. It was just early. That didn't exist. So I actually ended up beginning to consult without knowing that I was about to go into independent consulting.
Okay.
And so the positions that I wanted didn't quite exist quite yet. So either you were still tech or you were fashion, and fashion hadn't integrated. And there's no R&D in fashion. So there's no dedicated department that's like, hey, we'd love to hire people that are tech minded and fashion minded. So once again, I was like, well, I have to make this myself, which it's ambitious and it's an admirable thought. I had no idea what I was about to get into.
Yeah, because I'm like, okay, people go to graduate school, whether you go for education or, professional degree or whatever, once you have those credentials, it's like, I'm just going to go over here and get this job, right?
Yeah.
So that I have the credentials, I'm going to make the money, right? That really justifies the tuition, right? What it just costs to go. But you're in an area which is laughable today because you think Rent the Runway, all these things where fashion and tech is it's all the rage. Yeah. But you're coming out at a time where you are getting the skills, but you're ahead of your time, and in a sense, which if you were not Black, we might be having a different conversation because you might have been like, well, I just built my own company from the ground up because somebody gave me $1 million to do it.
Just to try it and to fail.
But that's not the story.
It's not the story.
So how are you breaking into consulting at that point in an industry that was still in its infantile or embryonic phase?
Through actually writing really shifted my life. Okay. So I wrote a lot. Just as soon as I had a business, when I first had my online store, I started writing tips. And then through grad school, I wrote a lot. To date, I have 80 published articles. The writing changed everything. It was just a hobby. I was just so passionate about it. I didn't have an outlet. It wasn't a lot of things where I could be like, hey, you want this white paper? So I just wrote and I put it on LinkedIn. That kind of started to position me as a thought leader early. And I think it's interesting because these skills that you don't really think about play such a big role in your life. Had I not started writing, so many opportunities would have been lost. So if I didn't write, if I didn't give tips, if I didn't research and put in the extra work, I wouldn't be where I am. But also writing seemed like a waste of time sometimes. It's no one's listening and no one's paying you to do it. But you put in that type of work so that you can establish yourself and have credibility. And that brought me clients. And so when I saw that was working, I was like, thank you, God. Because I wasn't sure I was going to do this. But writing brought me so many companies that would be like, I read your article. I saw what you said. Do you think you can help us with that? And I'm like, yeah. At first I was like, yeah, I can help. Here's how it works. Then one day I was like, yeah, I can help. I need a little money. Okay. Y'all got to pay me. No more free help. That's what the article's for. So I kind of stumbled into consulting in that way. So then I'm writing, I'm helping companies, and I have to retrain myself to be like, well, I'm not sure about this. So now I got to, listen to YouTubes about this or take a little course in this and stay ahead. But you're still a little early because everyone's like, who cares about fit and sizing? And we've been doing arbitrary sizing for 25 years. And it's like, when you look at your bottom line, this is going to affect you. And that conversation didn't really get popular until recently. So I was just really trying to stay afloat. And I did a little stint in corporate it wasn't for me. I was like, this is not the type of things I want to work on. It's a waste of 8 hours of my day.
What were you doing?
So I worked for this company called Lectra, and they basically were like a SaaS company, and they had some machinery for the intersection of fashion and technology as it related to the supply chain. So they just made machines and programs that made it easier for brands to do what they did.
Okay.
And that was, to me, boring. I was just like, this is boring.
Yeah, that doesn't strike me as your jam at
Yeah,
all.
I was like, I can't do this. Like, not at all. So Luxor and Finch, which was originally the name of my store, I just kept it. I kept my LLC. It converted into the consulting company after school, and we fumbled our way through it. We were like, let's just start working. And honestly, like, my first clients were tech companies who were like, we want to be in fashion, but we have no experience in fashion, so can you be that liaison? And I'm like, absolutely. And I understood enough tech to be like, to be able to communicate. And my very first company, Footsie, they were amazing, but they were Canadian. So their attitude about you being a woman of color and you having this diverse background was not as off-putting as other companies who would be like, well, you're not a white man.
Right.
So do you know anything?
Right.
And it's like, I don't have time to prove myself like this. So Footsie was very much like, we read your stuff. We think you're brilliant. Come work with us. And that was a blessing. Footsie's having a tough time now, but they were a great team of people who had an idea about like having a foot scanning app and when it would match you to shoes. So that was really cool to be on that team. I learned, like, I pretty much started doing marketing strategy and shifted into product management. So I didn't even realize that product management was a role that was best fit for me until I worked with them.
So was there a gap? Because, we tell these stories and it condenses time frames, right? When you got out of school, you had written, you've done all these things. And were people reaching out to you immediately?
When I was in school, yes, but it wasn't to the point where it was like, oh, I'm about to have a salary from this. So, like, when I left school, what did I do? I was like, I need to rebuild my consulting business. So I actually moved back to North Carolina because I thought that I could do it from North Carolina. I'm like, there's plenty of brands in North Carolina I can work with. This will be easy. So I was dating a guy and he was like, well, I'll help you. Like, I'll support you during that time. I'm like, okay, that sounds cool. That was a trick. It was more like, I
already know how this goes. Go ahead.
I mean, his intentions were great, but I think like he wanted something different. I think he thought I was going to move home and just like turn into a wife.
Yes.
And it was like, I just gave birth to this company. I have to feed it, grow it, nurture it, get it off the ground. Like, that's what I'm here for. So I ended up moving back to New York when I realized like I can't hop on a flight every week.
Right.
And I'm pretending like I'm in New York and I'm not. It's just too much. I got to go. And so I made that leap, but it was some gaps. There's always some time when you're just like, this wasn't on my schedule. This is not how I saw this going. Where's my glamorous life? Yeah, there was definitely a gap for that. And then coming to New York, I worked with some other tech companies. So I was working in and out of these offices and it was cool. And then one day I was like, I have to commit to going solo full time. Like, I can't double dutch in and out of this anymore because either we're going to do this or we're not. And that was when life got real different.
Yeah, because that net 30, net 60, companies don't respect those independent invoices all the time.
Where's my money? It's so much money that has to be chased. It's ridiculous. And what I didn't know starting out was how much I needed help.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. When you get so used to moving independently, asking for help, letting people help you, you don't even think about it sometimes.
Right.
So the first year I did great. I was surprised with myself. I gotten lucky. I worked with a company. The second year was tough. Second year was tough because the company started going under and then I had to scramble and like my timing for things. Like, you have to be out here trying to get clients while working with clients, while building content, while doing all this stuff. And I got burnt out. And so the third year is when I was like, I need help. And ironically, I was on LinkedIn. I reached out. I was like just looking at women of color who were in my field and just reaching out, and people didn't respond. This one girl responded. She worked for Amazon. Her name was Brittany Hicks. And I was like, hey, Brittany, I'm looking at your background. It's great. Can I just like pick your brain? She was like, absolutely, sure. So she's like, here, take my number. And her number was a 919 number. And 919 is North Carolina. So I'm like, girl, where are you from? She was like, I'm from Raleigh. I'm like, I'm from Durham, which are like neighboring cities.
Literally right next to each other.
And then we realized like so much of our life was parallel. So like we were both AKAs. We both went on this fashion tech route. We both had similar friends. She ended up being one of my partners. So she's a partner with me now. And everything that we've built together has been effortless. It's been profitable and it's been easy. It was so much easier than even consulting. And it made me realize like the beauty of partnership when it is correct. It is amazing. It is blessed. Because I was praying. I was like, Lord, I cannot do this by myself. I need a partner or a sugar daddy or something like. Just
But we
give me a
already
break.
established that sometimes
That sugar ain't sweet. So I didn't know what was going to happen, but meeting her helped because what we did, we were like, well, we're both in fashion tech. We need to meet other women to make this happen. How do we expand our networks? Because so much of this business is networks and referral.
Right.
Like I'm here because of a referral from a friend and we're all in the same industry, but that's how this business works.
Right. Shout out to Erica Nunez.
Ow, and the artist kit, go get one. So it's very interesting because the partnership part changed business for me permanently. And I was like, oh, I don't have to go back to as much struggling if I focus on partnering and like scaling back when I'm doing into something more digestible.
So what were you guys building together?
Great question. So we decided, we were like, okay, we need to meet more women of color in the fashion tech space. How are we going to do that? So we brainstormed a lot of things and we were like, you know what? Women like to eat, women like to drink. Why don't we just treat women to brunch? And those who are interested in really networking, they can come to the brunch. We'll put a panel together and we'll just get people together and see if they're struggling like us. So we planned our first brunch September 8th, 2018. We didn't know what we were doing.
Isn't that how it always goes?
Yeah. My sister had like a Soho House membership. I was like, can we use the Soho House? She was like, sure. Like, I don't care. So I'm like, hey, I'm Courtney Couch and I'd like to book an event. So we booked an event. We planned it. We put it on a credit card. It was just like, we had no idea what we were doing. We asked for panelists and so many of our like network friends were like, okay, we'll come through. I remember we had asked Misa Hilton, could she come? So she was like, you know, cool. Like, is there an honorarium? We were like, I don't know what an honorarium is, but we don't have it. So, but she ended up being like, I'll come anyway. So we got 35 women together in our industry, our friends. We had them at the Ludlow House. It was for a champagne brunch, right? We don't know what we're doing. We threw it together. It turned out to be one of the best events we've ever done.
Wow.
People cried in the room. People did business deals in the room. People were like, oh, I was emailing you last week. We needed to get you into Barney's. We love this brand. All of this happened in one room. And we realized like, oh shit, this is something. Like this is something. And so the demand for it went crazy. Now, funny story. We had a champagne brunch. So we had finagled us a sponsorship with Moët and they gave us like 8 cases of champagne for the women there. So we're at the Ludlow House. The night before, Brittany, she was working out of a WeWork because she was still working for Amazon then. Now she's independent and we work together. We have a co-company called Federal Road. But so the night before, she gets the champagne shipped to a WeWork. It's the wrong WeWork.
I was about to say, tell me that it showed up at the correct WeWork, please.
Not only did it go to the wrong one, but this was Saturday night. And on Sunday, nobody was there.
Is at WeWork. I had a WeWork office at one.
So the day of brunch, everything's like, okay, we're nervous. Everything's going fine. We're looking at the time. We're like, okay, so where's the champagne? She's like, okay, let me just go in the WeWork and get it. It's not there. So we're like, we've told people we're going to give them a champagne brunch. Where's our champagne? So we're panicking. WeWork is like, nobody's on duty. It's Sunday. The building managers are like, the guy who could open it is out of town. So now we're in a panic because we're like, brunch starts in 30 minutes.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah. So get this. This is how great Black women are. So there was a girl named Kiera. And Kiera, we originally wanted to put her on the panel, but it didn't work out and we had to put somebody else. But she was the head of WeWork for the New York. So so we had been communicating with her, but she wasn't coming to the brunch that day, so it was no big deal. I called her at like 11 a.m. like, hey, girl, I know you're supposed to be on our panel and it didn't work out, but we have a funny situation. We have X amount of cases of champagne locked in and WeWork, and our brunch is starting. Could you help us? She said, yeah, I'll be there in an hour. Just have somebody meet me. I'll get up. She was in Jersey.
That is
or wherever.
crazy.
Black women get it done. And it was like, I cannot describe that feeling when it was just kind of like, it was a day where everything that could go wrong goes wrong, but you pivot and you stay focused and you stay like, we're going to make this happen. And then everything comes back around in a way better than you imagine. So we ended up getting the champagne out. We had been like using the Ludlow House's champagne. So we were trying to replace their champagne. It was like in a brunch. We're handing out bottles of champagne.
Did they know you were using?
They were down. The staff was so cool. They were like, okay, we know y'all don't have it, so we'll trade out when you get it. So they were very cool. We were sending interns to buy champagne, but our guests had no idea. And so like this champagne debacle taught me and Britt a lot about how we work together. Because she was like, oh, I'm sorry. I said, listen, it's not a you thing. It's a us thing.
Right.
We got to get this done. It's fine. But we made a way out of no way. Thank you, Lord. And every brunch after that has been ultra amazing. We've been to LA, we've been to Seattle, we've been to DC, we've been to Atlanta. Our next one is coming up in February. But like from the brunch came workshops. So we're about to do a workshop series. We just got a partnership with Essence to do a fashion accelerator for people of color. It was so much came out of the brunch. Consulting deals came out of it. And that was just from a desire to be like, we just want to connect. We just want to partner. And sometimes what your idea of business is and what you're going to do is one thing, but if you're not flexible, you'll miss another opportunity.
Right.
Like I still consult, but what the brunch did was position us into another lane and make it supported what I'm doing, and it's taken off on its own. We got sponsorships through that, so we learned how to raise money, how to put things together, how to make things meaningful for our guests. It was like, to me, I described it as having 2 kids. I felt like I had 2 kids at once, but it was rewarding to see like, okay, my business is going this way. This is growing. We got to respond to it. So that was beautiful. I met Erica at a brunch. She came to one of the brunches.
Well, I just to go back a little bit.
Yeah.
I find it fascinating that you got anybody from Jersey to come to New York on a Sunday when they didn't have to, because that's a whole feat in and of itself.
I mean, she was the graciousness, the like, I see what you girls are doing. You need me, I got you. That has been the sentiment amongst women of color every time that we've reached out. And I know people are like, oh, well, Black women are hard to deal with because they have so many different attitudes. That has not been our complete experience. Our experience has been like, when we need Black women to show up and show out, they do so without needing anything. She was like, let me get up on my Sunday, come out here, help you girls, no big deal. Graciously. She could have been like, I thought y'all said I was going to be on the brunch, on the panel. I'm busy. And it's just like, it also taught us like, there's a misconception about Blacks working together.
Right.
I think it's just that we have to get past these preconceived notions that we have with other women as well. Because you can't let rest in bitch face stop you from speaking. So like one of the things we do at our brunch, when everyone comes in, we hug them and we talk to them by name. Like we know who you are. We have a picture of you. We hug you because we want you to know you're coming into an atmosphere where you're wanted, you're appreciated, and we want to share something with you. And that changes the tone and the atmosphere. All the time in our brunch, it always turns into like a yes, like testify, like, because I feel like if you give out a certain energy, people will match that.
Right.
And like both Britt and I have really strong personalities and energy. So if you have the ability to shift a room when you come in, that's your duty to do so. Like you just can't come in and be like, well, everybody seems stank here, so I'm gonna be stank too. Like, no, like, you know what? I'm gonna speak. I'm gonna introduce myself. I don't care about the response. I'm gonna do it so that people know like, hey, I'm here. If you want to chat, whatever, no big deal. Right. And I think that with Black women, that's something we're all going to have to learn, because we're all kind of like, I think a lot of Black women are like, I don't know about her.
Right. And I think that comes from having to be on guard in a lot of environments out in the world. And it becomes a default setting almost.
Absolutely.
And also, too, one of the things that my friends and I joke about is sometimes what is really social anxiety comes off as standoffish.
It does. That's so real. You're like, I'm nervous. I don't know these people. I don't know what type of atmosphere I'm in. I don't know if I'm going to be judged. That's a real thing. And it's just like, how do we take steps to get past that?
Yeah.
And for me, I'm like, the first step is to get past it on yourself. So like, I get nervous amongst a lot of people. Like, people think I'm really outgoing. I'm kind of like, I'm shy. Like, but it's like, if I want the tone to be a certain way, then let me present that, because what's the worst that could happen is like people don't speak back to you. Like, it's New York. Like, no, I'm not going to cry about that. So that has been a learning experience as well. It's just like, how do you present yourself and how do you make an impact in any group that you're in?
Yeah.
Because Black women are the wave. Like, we're the way. We are gatekeepers. We're at the forefront of every industry. We're the ones making decisions. Now we just have to link up in meaningful ways.
And I think also one thing that's really important is, it's funny when I go to these events or when I've hosted them, there are always tears that happen because it becomes a safe space that people didn't even know they needed. To have an outlet with those that understand and can relate to the struggles, especially if it's specific to industry. Because it can feel like you're on an island when you're trying to disrupt or innovate
all the time,
or just blaze your own trail or just be the only Black woman in the room.
Just survive as the only Black in the room.
Right, exactly. So when you get into a situation where somebody is literally testifying to your experience, there's that common bond that is built instantly.
Absolutely.
And this is why I'm like such a proponent of these spaces. Because it's great to get cute and, you know, put the makeup on and have champagne, but it's that spiritual feeding that you get as well that is really, really important.
And I think a lot of women are spiritual, and no matter what your belief is, our intuition, our ability to just perceive things, like, it's a part of our nature, and we have to learn how to embrace those things, even in working environments or social environments and all of that. And I think that's why it's important for us to have safe spaces and conversations and to push ourselves, because I also think that being the most highly educated group right now is isolating. We're also the most imitated. We're also the most unprotected group. So it's like, it is not easy. And I'm not saying that it's not tough to be a Black man. I absolutely know that it is, and I'm glad I'm not a man. I think that the privilege of being a woman is just what it is. But it is not easy to be a woman of color who is striving for something and who has to have integrity and hold things down. Like, it's tough. But it gets easier when you see other women doing it and when you have their support.
Absolutely.
Because it's like, we can't just exist singularly. Like, we have to be in tune with each other.
For sure. And one of the things that you mentioned from a tactical perspective that I want to touch on is the sponsorship piece. Because I talk to people every week who have an idea. They're like, I want to put this event on. I want to do this, but I don't know how to go about it. And I don't necessarily have the money to finance the whole thing. And I don't have the access to get sponsors. And people just have an inherent belief that when you're new, you can't get them because you have no track record. So how did you go about that?
That's very interesting. So first of all, working as a product manager helped me out a lot, because when you're thinking about lean and agile development, you think about really understanding your customer, like who you're building services to, and then how to create value. And when you translate that into asking for money and sponsorship, you realize, like, hey, let's understand exactly what companies we're going after, what need we can fulfill with them, and let's speak to them to that value. So even though we're new, what we did was for instance, we're like, who wants to support women of color? Who wants to see women of color in creative and tech fields make progress? Who has a budget for it, and who can we speak to? And then we made a list of those companies and we pitched them. And the value was, we're going to bring together this type of woman that you are interested in expanding your brand to. Here's how we can partner. Start at this amount, and then we can grow this. What do you all want in return? So I think having that conversation and knowing how to ask those questions is very important. You've got to know how to ask the right thing. Do your research. It's not hard. You just have to hustle.
I was about to say, you got to put the work in, because people want to make the ask without having had anything like that someone can hold on to and say, okay, this is real, anything substantive.
Absolutely. And it's like, rely on your network. So much of our things came from Black women who were in these positions who were like, okay, well, you know what? I think we can get you something because I support this. That was like a really big deal. Brittany went to A&T, and the HBCU network is strong.
Seriously, unmatched. Only, and which is closely related, but I think the only like similar thing is the Greek network. Like the Black Greek network is
it is like the Black
fascinating.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, the HBCU network has been so beneficial to us, and the attitude is a little different. So I don't know if because you go to a PWI that you're like, I'm the only Black and this is it. I work hard to be here. I can't let y'all other Blacks in. I'm sorry. But something about HBCU culture is like, you Black, I'm Black. Come on in. Let me help you. And not to say that people from PWIs aren't helpful. It's just been different. So a lot of our opportunities come from tapping resources and like people who look like us, and that is going to be a huge help. Partnership.
Absolutely.
Can I check my lip gloss?
Sure, go for it.
It looks crazy. It's a new brand, and I'm just like, okay, it's not bad.
You're doing all right.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you definitely in fashion though. Checking lip gloss. We might just leave that in just because why not?
Can I just check? You know, you start talking and it gets a little wild out here.
Absolutely.
But yes, the best way to get sponsorships is to understand your network, understand your value, convey that value in a succinct way, and also be able to convey what that company is going to get in return. Because a lot of times you're like, I need your money because, you know, this is a great cause, blah, blah, blah. But it's like, what are you giving them in return?
Right.
They want data, they want metrics, they might want email lists. You have to have that ready to be able to give to, and also be able to convey, like, this can become a long-term relationship. So
Right.
think down the road, present that, and it will be hard for people to say no. Also, timing. So you got to know, like, in the fourth quarter, people decide their budgets for the next year.
Yes.
Getting good. And sometimes it's not even an issue of people not wanting to work with you. It's like, we have all our money tied up. So sorry. So timing is perfect, understanding that. And then, like, your range. Sometimes a lot of companies can swipe $500 to $5,000. Like, it's not hard for them to say, like, okay, I can just put that on a card. If you want to go above that, it can get more difficult. So you have to think about timing. But if you can say, like, okay, we need 10 people at the $500 range, 3 people at the $5,000 range, and break it up like that, it makes it a little easier too. Because if you come in like, we need $1 million.
And I think that's part of the problem sometimes. Like, people are shooting for the stars. And like, that's great.
Yeah.
And sometimes you have those miracles that happen where
Yeah.
someone's like, okay, I'm just going to write you a check. But for the most part, that is not happening.
That's not how it is. It's a slow grind.
You got to, like, kind of find more people who can give you smaller amounts to get you to
Absolutely.
that goal. And think beyond, I think the issue, and I've had this too, this misconception that, like, oh, I have to prove that I have this many followers online, or like we use these metrics based on social media, which oftentimes they're not even real, but that's a whole other conversation.
Come
right?
on.
But there are ways that you can add value.
Yep.
That's not about I have 50,000 or 100,000 followers on Instagram. And the reality of it is, when you're talking about Black women, especially women of color, companies that want to reach us will start with small numbers.
Absolutely.
They just want to infiltrate, and as you mentioned, let it grow over time.
Absolutely. Sometimes saying, like, hey, we have a 50% email open rate is a big deal.
Yeah.
Because people don't open email. So you're like, we have a community that's so engaged with what we're doing that when we send an email, we get 50% open rate. Companies understand that, and they're like, okay, so y'all have an engaged community. We want to work with you. It's just very important. You don't have to have big metrics. You just have to have metrics that show growth or show that, like, this makes sense in the long term. Here's how we are projected to grow with your help. Also, don't turn down the in-kind sponsorships.
Yeah.
Because let's say Google's like, well, we can't give you any money, but we'll give you a space and we'll give you donations for your gift bag. You can now say you're still sponsored by Google.
Absolutely.
And once you say, like, Google sponsored us, other companies are like, oh, Google sponsored us. Like, yeah, so go ahead and give us our money. It makes it easier. So sometimes you got to understand the long-term play and, you know, just get out there and get something is better than nothing. But people want to see that other people believe in you as well. So.
Right, absolutely. So at this point, you started in fall 2018.
Yeah.
How many of these have you done total?
About 7 brunches now.
7.
Yeah.
So what kind of turnout are you seeing in the most recent ones?
So we started with 35 people. The last one we had 100 people, and we turned away like 75. So it's growing faster than we anticipated. We want to keep it small and intimate so that you can have conversations, but we also know that we have to kind of like, we have to make sure that people who want to participate can. So we've opened up for workshops this year because a lot of women at brunch were like, I love this brunch. I love what y'all touched on. Is there some way that everyone can go deeper? Like, can we create a workshop? And so I kept hearing that. So I'm like, Britt, we got to do workshops.
Yeah.
So now we're setting up for a workshop series. So let's say you can't make it to brunch for whatever reason. You can come to the workshop that's specific to whatever your interest is and get like actionable information. Because there's nothing worse than when you're going somewhere and you're like, I heard your life story, but you didn't tell me nothing I can do to make my life better.
Right.
So that's what we're doing because the demand for our community is growing a lot. And even like, we just went to DC and we had 150 people come to a workshop in DC, and we didn't think that it would be that huge. We went to LA, it was the same thing. And we're seeing people that's not only in fashion and tech, but media, PR, beauty, because they're like, I just want to be in a room where it's women of color as the central focus. Even men are always like, can we come to y'all's brunch? And we're like,
No.
no. But now we're like, because so many men ask, we're thinking about at the end of brunch having a mixer where we allow men in, but you have to come from companies that want to support women of color. You can't just come to try to like scoop up all the baddies. Like, you need to come with a checkbook or something, support these women. So we're thinking about allowing men to come, but for the mixer, because still it's like, no, we need our intimate space. Go away.
So what I always find fascinating about people who are in the fashion world is, of course, there's I feel there may be a pressure to embody that outwardly. So this is a purely superficial question.
Yes.
But like, one of the things that I talk to my friends who work in the fashion business, I'm like, you got to be on, at all times. Do you feel pressure to look like new money all the time because you work in fashion?
That is a great question. That is a really good question. Not necessarily. So because we don't work on the runway side, like if we dealt more on the like everything adjacent to catwalk and like, magazine stuff, it might be a little different. Because we're still on the business side, you're almost pressured to tone it down.
Really?
Yes. So it's very interesting because when people hear fashion on your name, they're automatically like, oh, fashion, that's cute. What do you do? Like, do you play with fabric? And it's like, actually, I'm in charge of a $3 trillion industry with $1 billion deficits that we're trying to innovate for, but whatever. What we try to do is not conform. Like sometimes something like a red lip just throws everybody off in a boardroom. They're like, oh, you wore a red lip. How can you be smart? And it's like, what? So, and also like, I'm a very casual dresser. Like I live for sweatpants and fly sneakers. And sometimes I'm like, my sneakers probably cost more than your suit, but I'm not going to trip. Like, I'm not going to, it's because people don't understand that they're not from that world all the time. Right. So like, there is a pressure for us to not conform and still be taken seriously. There's so many times when I enter a room and I'm like, red lip on, might have a sneaker on, something chill, but like, if we're talking about hype beasts or street culture or anything like that, I can go anywhere and people be like, oh, that's fly. Right. It's like, if I walk into your boardroom, people are like, oh, you wore a sweatshirt. It's like, do you know what the sweatshirt is? So we understand that there's a gap, but it's like, you're going to listen to what I say. Because if we're here to talk numbers, I got those, we can do that. It's so interesting because people first see me and they're sometimes always like when I do speaking events, I come in and they don't know like I'm the speaker. Yeah. So they're just kind of like, they're judging you. And then you get on stage and you're hitting them with these numbers and stats. And then afterwards they're like, oh my God, you're just so well spoken.
Oh gosh.
I'm like, well spoken. Okay. So the pressure is to like remain yourself and to be taken seriously at the same time. But however, me and Britt were talking the other day, we were like, we need a sponsorship by like a flyer Rent the Runway so that we can wear more fly things just because it does feel good. It's like we're fashion, so we like to go big sometimes. So I think it's kind of both. Like, you want to maintain your style because some of the things we talk about is so high level and it's strategy based. And you're talking to business teams, you're talking to e-commerce teams, you're talking to investors. And so like, you don't want to throw them off, but it's like, I can't walk in the room and tone it down for you. You're just going to have to respect what's coming out of my mouth. And that's what I'm prepared to do and present.
But what I find interesting is I've been in some executive dining rooms and things like that. And we feel pressure to conform. And I always applaud women, especially, or Black folks who don't. Yeah. But you will see a startup founder who looks very different in a t-shirt and jeans, and that's totally fine because that's a part of the culture. Or they're a techie, you would never expect them to
it's not threatening. And the thing is, when you're a person of color and you look any type of way, it threatens people. It threatens their security. It threatens how they feel about themselves. It threatens what they think about what you're going to say. It throws them off. They can't possibly think that you're intelligent. They're like looking at your resume like, you went to but you have on sneakers, and it threatens people. And it's like, sometimes we're okay with that. Like, get uncomfortable because you have white men show up sometimes, and white women, and things that you're just like, you got taken seriously like that. And you don't even speak well. You don't have to have any stats or numbers. You're just up here. And because you're unassuming and because you pose no threat, people don't have the same emotional response to you. It is an emotional response sometimes as a woman of color who, like, no matter what you wear when you walk into that room. People are going to feel things. And the idea is like people want you to tone that down.
Absolutely.
You need to walk into this room and make me feel comfortable is basically what people want. It's like, I'm sorry, but that's not what I'm here to do.
And confidence gets misconstrued as arrogance or aggression.
All the time.
Like, you have to be meek in a way for them to be like, okay, she's safe.
All the time. And that is something I struggle with personally. And I think that because I'm an entrepreneur and because I've been so independent, I kind of have an attitude of like, I do what I want.
Yeah.
Like, if you don't want to talk to me because of how I look or your assumption, we're just not going to talk. But I can't compromise because I haven't reached that point where I'm like, well, let me tone it down and make you feel good. And that could be good or bad. So don't take my advice on that. It's just how I am because I don't compromise on things like that. Ever since I've been younger, I've been in situations where I've been the only black woman, period. Whether it was school, I switched to an all white school in 3rd grade. And the first day I realized what blackness meant was when I got to class on 3rd grade, and they're playing this game called Red Rover, which as a black woman, I've never heard of Red Rover. And one girl in the middle of it looks down and she's like, hey, who's going to hold that black girl's hand? And I'm like, that black girl? Who is that? Because I'm like, I know I'm black, but that's not who I am. So it's like you get so used to coming into a room and everyone's like, you're black. Right. You're a woman. What are you? That I've just developed this air of like, I don't care. Like, let's just get straight to business. But I can imagine for a lot of other people, it can feel like pressure. And my advice is just to, you control the room. If you get that much attention and if you make people feel like that, then you also have the gift of shifting the energy in the room. And you should take that and control it. You should take that and shift it in the way that you think is necessary, because sometimes that fear of you is a good thing. Sometimes that people not knowing or underestimating you is a great thing. And you got to recognize what it is and kind of like, in judo, you got to take that energy and turn it into something you want.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So just that piece alone, reference to that, I know that it's not always easy.
Yeah.
But along those lines of overcoming difficulty and obstacles, tell us about a time when you had to be extraordinary on an ordinary day.
Ooh. That's a good question. And you said you were going to ask this.
I told you, people forget about it all the time.
Absolutely. Extraordinary on an ordinary day. I have a lot of examples. I'm trying to think about one that would probably be, I guess on a personal note, like walking in rooms that are all white, being underestimated, that's like regular. But to me, I had to make a decision about a relationship or go to grad school. And I think that it was one of those times in your life where you're looking at people around you and people are getting married and people are settling down. And I was in a relationship and we were falling apart. And the person that I was with was basically like, I think you should stay with me. I think we should work on us. I think, we should get married, this, that, and the third. And I had to make a decision between, do I do this or do I cut this off and pursue a career that I don't even know about? Right. Do I let this go and do I change my life? And it's like a regular day for everyone else. But I think that as a woman and like just watching something fall apart that you thought was steady and knowing that you're about to deal with heartbreak while you're about to change your life and your career, I think that I had to go inward and I had to really make peace with myself. Right. And I had to be extraordinary in the sense of I had to be vulnerable. I had to break down. I had to let all that go. I had to realize like maybe you haven't built yourself up to be who you thought. Maybe like, yes, you needed all this emotional support, but now you're going to cut it off. And I had to really hit a bottom. I just had to hit a bottom. And I was going to grad school hitting this bottom. Like I was entering grad school, breaking up, realizing like everything in my life is shifting. And also like having to tell myself we're about to be alone, period. Like you're going to be alone, you're going to isolate, but you're going to rebuild because what you have to do is beyond anything you've ever done, and you're going to have to be somebody different. Right. And I feel like that low point was an extraordinary time for me looking back because at first I was like, oh my God, life sucks. I'm about to enter this great thing. And I'm like, I don't have a boyfriend. I'm this, that, and the third. But like for many women, I think you're going to always have to make these decisions where you have to be extraordinary just to yourself. Like Absolutely. No one else is going to see it. No one else is going to help you through it. You have to make these small micro decisions of like, babe, you're going to have to be greater than this. And what I learned to do in those moments was you're going to have to tear yourself down and build yourself up 1,000 times. So let's get used to it. Let's do it. Go through it, cry, be upset, do whatever. But now you have to get up. You have to move. You have to be okay. And because I could do that with myself and have that honesty with myself, I could apply that to everything else. Everything else was easier than that.
Yeah.
Like everything, walking into rooms, being nervous, whatever. It's like, I always told myself, like, what's the worst that could happen? Like, let's go there mentally. Let's address it. Now let's move forward.
Right.
Because anything after that is a cakewalk. So
Absolutely. And it's so funny because I know so many women, myself included, who have that story where they chose an advanced degree or this or something over the guy who was like, stay here, like, or that's not going to work. If, you know, this isn't going to work if you go to school there.
Yep.
But I don't have one male friend who has that story.
Of course not. Men don't have to do that. Well, I have this thing that I've been thinking of, and maybe people will tell me if it's right or wrong. I think that because men don't have to deal with pain in the same way that women do, they can always position themselves not to be in situations that hurt, whereas women have to condition themselves to understand that you may be hurt. And the reason why I think this is, like, men have a lot of options. They can choose career first. They can choose whatever. They know there's plenty of women, but they also can choose their vulnerability. Like, they can choose, like, do I want to talk to this girl? She seems risky, whatever. I can choose her, whatever it is. Men have a choice whether or not they want to feel pain. Whether it's, do I want to fight? Do I want to play a sport? Do I want to get in a relationship and give her, all of my emotions? That's their choice. I feel like women, from early on, we are taught to just deal with pain. It is not a choice whether or not you're going to feel pain or not. It's more of like, you are going to feel pain. How are you going to deal with it? For instance, when you're young and, you first get your period, you're going to have cramps. That's something people prepare you for. You're going to be in pain. You got to take pills for that, get over it, go to school, smile. Okay, cool. So when you first want to have sex, that's going to be painful. It's going to be painful. Everyone tells you about it, get over it. When you want to give birth, it's going to be painful, get over it. So there's so many instances where some of the greatest things in our life comes on the other side of pain. Whereas I don't think that men are quite conditioned to that in the same way. They can choose, like, they might feel pain if they get into a fight again or play sports, but it's different. So, like, I feel like that men don't have that story because they have a privilege that women don't have when it comes to that. Like, how they attach themselves, when they want to be vulnerable, what they want to give, cool. But for us, once you choose somebody and you love them, the vulnerability starts almost instantly. You know it.
And I would say, like, women who are not emotionally available, men are gonna have a lot to say about what you just said.
I know, y'all don't hate me.
But women who are not emotionally available have a hard time, I think, getting men to commit. Like, they I won't say they require that from us, but they inherently expect it, right?
They do.
They don't want you matching their energy in a sense. Like, even if they're not opening up in that way, it's like, well, I need you to, even if I'm not giving you,
like, be
the same in
vulnerable for
return.
me.
Yeah.
I wasn't emotionally available for the last 2 years, and it's been very interesting. Like, the feedback I got when I was dating has been, like, very interesting. Like, it causes so much insecurity, and I'm like,
Did you get that? I can't quite figure you out.
yeah, I don't know what you want. I'm like, but I told you. So there's the problem. I gave you a list of what I wanted, and you're worried about, how much I'm giving you. Sometimes I feel like you just want to manipulate people, but that's a different discussion. But I do think that, like, it just, for instance, there will be a time as a woman, if you're very focused, I don't have a lot of emotions for anything else. Like, I'm a no nonsense type of person. I have to balance that a lot. But, like, sometimes you don't want to be vulnerable in that way, because for me, those vulnerabilities can affect how I make money. If I'm arguing with you or I'm sad, it's going to affect how focused I am sometimes. And I know that. So, like, one of these things are not as important. It's not that the person isn't, it's just that, like, I have to maintain. So you got to respect me in the sense that if I'm not even giving to you emotionally, it's not because I don't care for you. It's because I have to maintain and I'm doing something. So we're just not going to take it there.
Yeah, and I just think that's not really accepted for women.
It's not.
Men can compartmentalize and say, I'm just really focused on my career. And I saw it, in school and whatever, like the girlfriend that just stood by and waited until the focus was on marriage or what have you. We often don't get the benefit of the doubt in that way.
Oh, no. People are like, for instance, one of my male friends married his girlfriend after 6 years or whatever. And he didn't really want to, but he was like, I mean, she stuck around, and what else should we do? I'm like, what else should you do? And she stuck around. And she was okay with that because she had been taught that, like, this is how men are. And sometimes, you have to wait to get their love and their affection. But if you keep trying, they'll give it to you. And it's like, as a woman who's used to resolving issues and getting what she wants, that just doesn't work for me. You know what I mean? I don't think it's accepted with women. And then people label you as all sorts of things. Like, oh, you act like a dude. It's like, oh, I act like a dude. I act like a dude because I don't want to argue with you. And I'm okay with that too. I think it's a different type of woman that exists right now than ever before. And it's hard to understand these dynamics when women are now becoming breadwinners, when we're educated, when we can do a lot for ourselves. I think it makes it difficult for men to understand, well, what can I do for you? Because traditionally, they didn't have to be emotional. They had to be providers.
Right.
They had to do all these other things. But when you take the need for you to provide out of the equation, and now I need you to be an equal, and now I need you to reciprocate, I think it's actually difficult for men. And I think that women have a choice. It's either like, okay, well, you know, I can teach you and I'll hold your hand and I'll wait. Or it's like, holla at me when you get it together. Because in the meantime, I can't be disturbed.
Which I think there's a lot of that energy happening, particularly around women who are very driven, building a brand, building whatever. But the part for I think the part that some women struggle with is like, that's the energy that they feel, that's genuine. But the logical side is like, oh, is anybody gonna be left by the time by the time somebody's ready to deal with me, you know?
I think women have to understand, like, don't think in scarcity.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, there's plenty. Like, regardless of what it seems like, there is someone who can match your energy depending on the energy that you're giving. At the same time, don't compromise. Like, don't do anything out of need. Don't just be like, well, I just need to hurry up and get married or have some kids. I'm gonna just do something. Like, you can always find somebody on your wave. You just got to be honest with presenting what that wave is and where you are.
Right.
Because I've found that, like, there are a lot of men out here who can adjust, but it is a teaching thing. It's like, we have to understand that this new relationship looks different from our parents. It looks completely different. So at the same time, I feel like women also have to learn how to communicate on that level with men and, like, manage those expectations.
Sure.
Because a lot of times, like, now I realize, like, I date and I realize, like, I have to encourage good behavior a lot. Because even though I expect it, it's like, I want to be thankful and grateful for what you're doing to let you know, like, if you're not getting like googly eyes out of me or this because I'm busy, I appreciate every piece of effort that you're putting into this. And I want us to keep growing and maintain that. Now, I can't, be different, but I can try and make this easy for you to feel like you have a space in my life.
Positive affirmation.
You know what I mean? Yeah, that's helpful. I think also a lot of alpha women forget that, like, you can set these standards for men, but men still need encouragement, and you got to find out what type of love they need so you can reciprocate that. I think we forget to do that as well.
Absolutely. Because
we're busy being like, I don't have time to be vulnerable. I don't have time to do this. And it comes across as like, I don't have time for you. I don't need you.
Exactly.
And then it's a struggle for us because we're like, but if I get all goo goo gaga, I feel weak. So you got to find the balance of like, I need to let him know he's appreciated. He has a position in my life. It may not be like, you don't have to pay my bills, but you can. But what you do is appreciated. And I think that's something that women have to work through and that men have to work through as well.
Yeah, I compare it to a mentor of mine who's like a huge football fan. He's like, I get so annoyed when these guys get on the field and they make one tackle and it's not even a big tackle and they're like going crazy and cheering. He's like, dude, that's just your job. And I think sometimes we as women do that, right? A man does something or makes a kind gesture and it's like, oh, thank you. And because inherently we believe that's what you're supposed to be doing and you don't get a certificate for that, not realizing that when you take the positive reinforcement out of it, someone can feel like, well, am I pouring into a bucket with holes in it? Like, does she appreciate me? Am I dispensable? Et cetera. So, and gratitude and affirmation does not equate to weakness.
Exactly. You have to do that because, so I read this book called The Boy Crisis, and I forget who it's by. It changed my thoughts about men and what they're going through. So the book basically described like the hardship of men adjusting in a time when women don't need providers and how it makes them feel and how like the world doesn't coddle them as much. And even if you don't agree with everything in the book, it does help to give you perspective. And just like what you're saying, it's like, I think that in a relationship, you have to give what your partner needs and you have to first know what that is and then do it, even if it feels unnatural to you, even if you're like, you should open my door. But it's like, yes, you should, but I'm still grateful. Like, I appreciate what you're doing. I see what you're doing. I like it because like I said, I would much always rather be a woman. I'm not saying that it's easy being a woman, but I wouldn't want to be a black man. I see it. And I, and because of that, I understand where they're coming from. And I try to be empathetic to whatever it is that they're dealing with in a way that's like, how can I support him in this role where I am without compromising myself?
Right.
How do we do that? And I think it takes a lot of balls for women to do that. And I think that's why we need sister circles, so we can all get together on Fridays and be like, girl, I had to say thank you again.
Right.
But it's like, just do it.
Women who are like, so I'm sure, because all women do it, and fellas, I'm sure we do it. We send screenshots of like text exchanges.
Oh, yeah.
And I've been in situations where I'm talking to, a girlfriend, and she's like, well, he's not doing X, Y, and Z anymore. He fell back, and I don't know why. And I'm like, well, look at the text exchange. Like, he was like pouring it on, and in response, you're like, oh, or thanks, or not saying anything, or, and any of us, we need it. We need that affirmation. You need someone to acknowledge the effort that you're putting in. Nobody's saying that you get to have a wife because you did the bare minimum, but you just have to show someone that you appreciate it, and they feel like they're getting a return on their investment in some way.
There is power in nurturing. And I feel like as women, that's one of the best things that we do. Like, we can nurture. And I'm not, like, don't get me wrong, like, the whole don't believe in potential thing, don't waste your time. But I have seen, because I have brothers and I have a father, like, there is strong power in nurturing. And as a woman, if you know that you have that strength, you can nurture a lot of things in people, including men, into a greater version of who they are. But they're supposed to reciprocate that too. So, like, I think a lot of times in relationships, we forget, like, we're both supposed to be making each other better. We're supposed to be making progress. So we're going to have to evolve how we talk and what we do for the betterment of each other. And not just like, well, I'm used to getting this for the last 5 years because that's how dudes treat me. You got to figure out, like, okay, so how do we get from point A to point B? How do you feel? And you got to talk, conversation.
Use your words. I say this all the time.
Your words.
Use both sides.
Draw pictures, but like get the message across. And communication, I think, we assume a lot of stuff. Like, you just assume, like, because he's done XYZ so long, he's going to keep doing it, or it doesn't bother him, or, he's not communicating because he doesn't need to. It's like, well, you got to get past it. You got to learn some things. But it's also a full-time job.
It is. It's not easy. And when you're trying to build something, it's like, I don't have any energy left to give to that. And you have to decide, is it important enough to me now, or I'm going to make the sacrifice to do that? You got to shift things around for it.
Some of the advice I give whenever people are like, I'm starting a business, what should I focus on? I'm like, focus on you. So if you're in a relationship and it's not supportive, if it doesn't feed you, if it doesn't help you, if they're not introducing you to people or giving you some concepts that's helpful, put it on pause. Because another thing is, like, you don't want to become that person who is demanding and going through all this stuff and you're taking it out on somebody. But you also don't know what you want from them. So it's like, you got to focus on one thing at a time sometimes, because being with somebody is a full-time job of, like, let me learn you, respect you, uplift you. And yes, it comes natural, but sometimes it does not.
Right.
Sometimes I'm like, an ex one time was like, you don't text me good morning anymore, so I feel like you don't care. And I'm like, I don't text you good morning because I start my mornings differently now. Maybe I want to meditate. Maybe I want to pray. Maybe I'm busy. But eventually I had to be like, if that's something they need, then I need to provide that. But, notice I said ex because I can't text you every morning. I realized, I was like, I can't do this. I'm not the girl for you. You need somebody who can do that. I want you to be free to, like, get that. So you got to know yourself.
Right. It's acknowledging this may not be the best situation for that person or me.
It's not going to be healthy for you.
And good morning is a small thing, but I'm sure it was representative of some other inherent issues.
And I knew myself. I'm like, I don't do routines like that too well. Like, I'm by the third good morning, I'm like, you're going to have a good morning. You don't need me to say it. I'm having a good morning. I'm busy. I'm sorry. So
yeah,
that
I
was
think,
the thing.
like, both genders, and I said this on another show that I was on, like, just need to extend grace to each other. People come in with perceptions of who they think driven women are.
They do.
We come in with perceptions of men, how they're going to react to us, and it's going to take some time to find your rhythm with anyone.
It does.
You know, and also we talk about the oppression Olympics on this show, like who has it worse. If you're talking about Black love,
Yeah.
kind of just putting that aside
Yeah.
and figuring out how do we add value to each other.
Who has it worse?
You want to answer that question?
Yeah, I want to know what your
Why
answer.
are you asking me? I'm
'Cause I need
interviewing
to
you.
know. Mm-mm.
You know, I think to your point earlier, there are certain things that are specific to Black men. Like I know when I walk into a room, as we were talking about earlier, because I have a strong personality, it can be off-putting to some people who don't look like me, right? But it's very easy for me to disarm them, right? And you mentioned that earlier. You know your stuff, what have you. For Black men, I think it's a different level of intimidation. And if they're standing in their power and who they are, it's not as easy to pull those walls down.
God forbid you're tall and dark skinned.
Right,
Like,
exactly. An imposing figure in some way by way of height, size,
anything.
complexion, whatever. So while I think our struggles are different, I do think that there are things that I can overcome in a way that it might be more difficult for Black men. Now, do I agree that people don't value us as Black women in the way that they should and all that stuff? Absolutely. But I have so many strong Black men around me who do and respect me and will do what they can to protect me as well. But if we are talking about in that lane of like acceptance and overcoming certain barriers in terms of stereotypes and perceptions, I feel like I'm able to do that in a more quicker manner than maybe a Black man.
Yeah,
can.
I don't think I want to be a Black man, but I love being a Black woman. Like even with all the ups and downs and how people feel and all that, it's like I wouldn't trade it for the world. I feel like being Black and a woman has never made me feel anything but powerful. And like when you know yourself, you know your history, you know who you are, like there's comfort in that. And I do think it's different for Black men. I think their struggles are different. Even if you think about how many women, when you're dating and what's out here, you know the struggles for some Black men. And you're like, damn, you know, life got you and things got tough. I don't know if I can save you. I don't know if I can help you. We see that. And like somebody once asked me, they were like, do you feel like that because Black women are so highly educated and like are pushing forward on so many planes, do you think Black men are their equals? And I was like, whoa. I don't know how to answer that. Yeah. Because I was like, maybe statistically it could look like that they're not. So I was like, equal in what way? But it made me think like, if other people think that, do men think that? Do they think on the inside like, I'm not her equal or something like that? It made me wonder because I was like, that's a tough question.
I think it does happen. There's a perception even in our own community that she's out of my league. And that plays out in two ways, I think. Well, there's the positive way when people are like, I'm just rise to the occasion and see what happens. But outside of that, I think people throw in the towel too early because they think that they can't match you on the income front or whatever, the power, the influence front. There's that. Or there's the reverse where it feels like a competition. So it's now it's like I have to cut you down to size so that I can make myself feel tall.
Yeah.
So and I've experienced that 50 times over, you know.
Yeah. You know, as a tall woman, it is tough. I think that having the ability to look most people in their eye creates such a strange dynamic sometimes. Like people get really weird about it. But I think it's an interesting question, like, you know, how do men feel and all that. And that's why I think strong women just have to be conscious again of like, you know, reading the room, reading your partner, over communicating is best, I think, initially until you learn somebody. And then just, you know, what would you want somebody to do if you were in the reverse situation?
Right.
You know, I try to think about that.
And I've said this several times, and I'm going to say it again. Texting is not the appropriate mode of communication for important issues.
No, because you never know. You'd be like, what? You mean okay?
Right, exactly.
Okay, like what? Like call me because the way my brain works, I'm going to make an analysis of this.
Exactly.
I'm going to get to my conclusion. That's it. You don't want me to get to my conclusion alone. So just call me and talk to me and let's get there together.
Like, please stop with the whole trying to have serious conversations over
or
text.
Use a meme. Memes help me understand things better.
Yeah, can't handle it at all. That clearly I'm triggered over this whole text, resolving issues over text.
Texting is annoying.
Yes,
it's like, I don't know what you're saying. Just call me.
So what's on the horizon for you?
Great question. So we have another brunch coming up February 8th. We're going to start the workshop series. We have the accelerator starting. And I think in the next year, I'm actually going to start building a platform that I've been like developing the MVP for.
Okay.
So it's going to be a personal shopping platform that's peer-to-peer based. I've been sitting on it for a while, figuring out like when is the perfect time to launch. So that's going to come soon, probably towards the end of this year, because there's so much that has to be done. I do have a co-founder for that, but we got to raise, we got to do all this stuff. So that'll be fun. But we'll probably be out in the community trying to grow our Women of Color series. So it's Women of Color Worldwide. Offering more workshops. The Essence Accelerator is going to be pretty cool. Like we're still like getting all the details for that. And I don't know what else. I'm going to just keep trying to expand and grow and like see what's out there. I'm open to what life has to offer me. I hope to take some vacations this year.
Yes.
Okay. Do
Gotta
some things
recharge.
Yes. I'm working on like more investments because it's like it's cool to make money, but you also have to let your money make your money. And when you work hourly, you start realizing like this can't be like when you have an hourly rate or even a salary, you're like, what I make can't be tied to what I'm doing. It has to make it for itself. So hopefully I'll be a real grown woman by the end of this year. So I don't know. I'm open.
And where can people find you online and more about your brands?
So luxorandfinch.com, LuxorandFinch is the consulting company. Women of Color Worldwide, that's WOCworldwide.com. And yeah, you can find me on those two things. I would give my personal Instagram, but I'm a little cautious about that. But I'll give it anyway.
Is it open?
It's open.
Okay, go for it.
It's @_Jessica_Veronica_. So yeah, definitely reach out to me, DM me, chat with me. Don't be mad at my comments, y'all. It's just my opinion, and I'm sticking to it. But
yeah. I can't wait to hear the feedback on some things you said on here.
Y'all edit that out.
DeMarcus, are you gonna chop some of this up into clips? Some of this controversial commentary. So
Edit
you better
that
talk
out.
to him about
Right,
that.
DeMarcus, let's talk. You know, we're gonna have a little conversation.
Well, I thoroughly enjoyed this.
Me too. Thank you guys so much for having me, and thank you for this opportunity, and keep being amazing doing what you're doing, giving people of color a platform to chat about things that you normally don't get to talk about.
We appreciate you.
Yes.
To our listeners, listen, especially if you're looking for a network, a support system, tactile information, connections, money, all of it,
Yeah.
and are in the spaces that Jessica talked about. Check her out online.
Please do.
And look up her brands. Remember to like, share, subscribe to this podcast. Tell people about this episode if you enjoyed it. Don't just text me and DeMarcus. For those of us who know us personally, go out there and tell somebody as well. And remember to be extraordinary on an ordinary day. Take care.